there must be more to life than packing boxes and working in a factory. And I got paid $200 per month, which, as we say in Thailand, is nit noi, right? That's a little bit. To then eventually become a general manager of a 5-star boutique resort. I had everything, and I wasn't happy.
It's quite a powerful story, starting from a workshop to having your own business, transforming lives, really. Wow.
And I believe that that's a clue. When our happiness or our fulfillment is beginning to decline, that is a message from the subconscious mind that we need to grow, that we need to do something different. NLP is Neurolinguistic Programming. Neuroscience tells us that we have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. 95% of those thoughts are the same as the day before and the day before that and the day before that. And on average, 70% of people's thoughts are actually negative.
And sometimes, even with the collective unconscious, you could be experiencing thoughts that your ancestors might have experienced at some point in time, but the unconscious does not know, the present and the past right there.
We need to train them how to behave. Good boy, right? No, don't do that.
Today in human beings, that creates a lot of suffering is the notion of I know, right?
Yeah,
and I think
know everything. 12 months into my role there, I hit the targets. I got the KPI. And they did not pay me what they had promised me. So my life is outstanding because I used NLP to reprogram my human operating system. And now, instead of looking at the world like this, I'm not worthy, now it's like, I am worthy.
Welcome, Luke. It's amazing to be in conversation with you today. Welcome. How have you been? How's life been for you, Luke?
Great. Hey, Sohail. So nice to connect with you again after about, almost 8 years, I guess. So thanks for the invitation to join you on this amazing podcast. And life is good, my friend. I've been really good. Since we last met, I set up my own coaching and training company called Coachology, together with my wife, Coach Christy. She's also a coach and trainer, and I'm based here in Bangkok, Thailand still. And our company, which has been up and running now for 5 or 6 years, has been going really, really good. And it was really one of the best decisions I think certainly I've ever made in my lifetime, given that when you have your own company, yes, there are certain extra stresses involved, yet the creative freedom that you have by delivering the content you want to deliver, by working with the customers and the partners that you want to work with, by attracting the kinds of clients and participants that want to join our courses, has really been amazing, mind-blowing, in fact. So that creative freedom far outweighs any stresses of running your own business. So life is good, happily married with 3 cats, 2 birds, and a recent puppy to the addition who's just had to move rooms because he likes to bark.
That's absolutely lovely to know, Luke. I remember the first memory, we were just talking about it before pressing the record. I remember you, right, just meeting with you first time in Bangkok, pretty young and hungry at that point in time, right, looking to get into the profession. And I think, just the energy, I generally sort of work with a lot of energy and, people in my work in psychotherapy. So I felt like, this huge motivated energy of yours. So I sensed it back then, and it's so powerful that I still sort of remember it right now, and just wanted to acknowledge that. So it's lovely to have you on the show today. Thank you. So we'll, sort of start and, dive in deeper into the conversation. So maybe let's start with, NLP, right? And the purpose of this conversation really is to have a really mindful conversation where we're not speaking for the sake of really speaking, but really speaking because we want to say something, right? So any silence is more than welcome during this podcast. So let's start with NLP, right? Because that's how I know you. What is NLP to the core of the basics, right? And if someone wants to sort of pursue NLP as a modality for, self-improvement or personal growth, can you tell us what would that look like for a person, Luke?
Yeah, well, I guess just before we get to the explanation of the NLP, I'd like to share how I came about becoming an NLP trainer myself.
Sure.
So my personal development journey began, about 30 years ago when I was still in Australia. And I was working in a factory at the time, a manufacturing factory where I was working on the production line. I was in a leadership role, so I was the production manager taking care of a team of 20 or 25 and 4 or 5 production lines and lots of boxes going out the door, boxes of products and shampoos and lotions and potions and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of realized that, there must be more to life than packing boxes and working in a factory. Now, at that time, my kind of comfort zone was really quite small. I was kind of on this hamster wheel of life, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. But of course, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so through a series of coincidences and synchronicities, if you like, I got introduced to this workshop. I had nothing to lose. I had turned the page in my book of my life where I was, in addition to working in the factory, I was like what we call in Australia a rev head, right? I would do up my cars and spend all the money on the cars and go racing the cars. And I'd actually got to a point where I realized I was not passionate about that anymore. So I'd sold everything that I had car related and I had, maybe $20,000 in the bank. And it was right at that time, once I'd started to shift my own mindset, that this workshop suddenly became like visible, if you like. And so I registered. I figured I had nothing to lose, and I just went for it. And I remember that was the exact instructions of the facilitator. He said, look, whatever you put into this workshop is what you're going to get out of this workshop. So I really recommend that everyone play at 100% and just go for it. And I did. I followed the instructions and I really, really went for it. And it was a 4-day workshop that was facilitated by a group called the Institute for Self-Actualization. And the workshop was called The Experience. And I'm not sure if it's still around anymore. And this is like 30 odd years ago. Anyway, at the end of this 4 days, my mind was blown. It was like, prior to that workshop, it was like I was looking at the world in black and white. And then suddenly on that Sunday night at the end of the workshop, it was like everything was vivid color, just bright and shining and these beautiful emotions. And I was just like totally transformed.
Yeah.
Right. Now, from that experience, fast forward about another 11 years. So from that experience, I went backpacking around the world for 1 year. I arrived to Thailand. I attended some other workshops during my travels. I was doing the backpacking thing. I was working on construction sites. I was working in bars, and just funding myself around the world for 1 year. I arrived to Thailand. I did not want to go home, and so I created an opportunity to work in the hospitality industry. I made my way down to Koh Samui, which is a tropical island in the south of Thailand here. Beautiful, beautiful island. I got down there and I started working in a hotel and I got paid $200 per month, which, as we say in Thailand, is nit noi, right? That's a little bit. But I had a great boss, I had a great mentor, and I worked hard. And over the years, I worked my way up to then eventually become a general manager of a 5-star boutique resort. And so it was 10 years passed in that hospitality field, working in the hotels in Koh Samui. I was in Koh Samui the whole time. And then I kind of got to a point where I wasn't happy anymore. And thankfully, my salary did go up, right? I was getting paid quite well at the end. I was getting paid $5,000 per month. I could, eat in the restaurant. So I could eat my tom yum goong, which is like the spicy prawn soup, on the beach with the, the palm trees and the turquoise water. So I had everything, and I wasn't happy. And I thought, okay, Luke, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And what was going on was I'd stopped growing, right? So I got the hotel to a point where it was running on autopilot, this last particular hotel that I was at for 2 years. When I started at that last hotel, it was, like a train wreck, no systems, no processes, nothing. And so I got all those systems put in place, and it was just chug, 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 chug. And I wasn't growing anymore. I was not reading books. I wasn't attending workshops. I was working like a dog. I was working long days, 6 days a week. I was definitely drinking too much, trying to manage my stress levels. And I just decided, you know what? I don't want to be in hospitality for the rest of my life. So then that begs the question, right? What's next, right? What am I going to do next? All I know is packing boxes in the factory and hospitality, and I don't want to do hospitality anymore. Yeah, I'd reached GM level. Like, what's next? And so I asked myself a very important question, and that question is, at what point in my life have I felt most passionate and most alive? And so I sat with that question for a couple of days, and then it just hit me one day. The time that I was most happy and most alive was at the end of that workshop that I had attended in Australia about 11 years prior. On that Sunday night when everything was so bright and vivid, that was the most alive I felt, where every neuron was tingling in my body.
Yeah.
So I literally just made a conscious decision and say, I want to be a coach and a trainer, right? And then I just decided. I put it out there into the universe. And then lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, I was doing yoga at one of the yoga places down there on Samui, doing the downward dogs. I'm like, just started chatting to this guy next to me. We grabbed a coconut after class. And I said, what do you do? And he says, I teach NLP up in Bangkok. And I went, really? He said, yeah, I'm a coach and a trainer. And I said, get out of town. And so obviously we hung out. He was down doing a detox for a week or something. We spoke at length. I resigned from Hotel World and I went up and started working with him. Let's call him Bob. Yeah. So I started working with Bob. He already had an existing training and coaching company. And so one of the first things I needed to do was attend NLP as a student, right? Now, this is where it got really interesting. And this was the first workshop I'd participated in like more than 10 years, I'm going to say. And
so the last one being in Australia, wasn't it?
Exactly, right? Well, I did do 1 or 2 workshops when I was traveling through the US, which was just after I left Australia. But aside from that, and a couple of books here and there, not much. Now, what was interesting is when I went through this NLP, I was able to see the similarities with that first workshop that I had attended in Australia all of those years ago. And I thought, wow, that course that I attended back in Australia, they called it the experience because it was experiential learning. Right, there was no workbooks, there was no notes, it was all like exercise activity with a bit of theory, of course, a bit of content sharing. And it was like, wow, that module of NLP was that thing that we did there, and this one was this one, and this one was this one. So that first workshop that I had attended, it was basically an experimental application of these tools of NLP. So it kind of connected the dots, if you like. And so, of course, then I fell in love with NLP, which brings us to your question, kind of what is NLP and how do we use it?
And I think just to sort of, before we get into it, I feel like, just this story, it's such a powerful story, like attending a workshop, right? And I'm a big skeptic when, you go through these trainings where people commit that, this is going to be life changing, right? And sometimes you come out and you go like, did not even make a difference. But in some trainings, really, you just go, and like how you say, it just completely blows your mind away. And I think the beauty of it is that it's possibly us being more ready to be able to embrace, what the program has to offer. And seems to me like you were very ready at that point in time to be able to, just really sort of take on board what the facilitator was talking about there. So just wanted to acknowledge the power of the work that you do, Luke. Just a few words, right, can actually change lives, right? So, and I think something that I found in your story quite powerful was that, you come across as someone who likes to build things, right? Create things. So even in the, industry, so you created the processes, right? You went up to the GM level, and then you started feeling quite stagnant, like, because you created a whole process, right? And then your creative energy probably needed another outlet right there. And just being able to allow and embrace yourself to another venture takes a lot of courage there, Luke. So it's quite a powerful story, starting from a workshop to having your own business, transforming lives. Really, wow.
Thank you, Sohail. I mean, back in the early days when I left Australia, I'm a very logical person. Most of the time, things have to make sense. And I do things in order, and I'm quite thoughtful about it. And there comes a time, though, when we must get out of our comfort zone, because as I said a moment ago, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And you can't really think your way out of a problem. Like it helps, but at some point you have to take action. And so, our next level of success for you, for me, for the audience listening here, it involves doing something different. And, a lot of people, when we call it the comfort zone, it's more like a fear of the unknown, right? So in order to grow to the next level, we've got to do something different. And oftentimes that is unknown, because if we knew what we needed to do, we would have already done it, and we would have already achieved that next level of success. So Correct. Getting out of the comfort zone is more about being open to not knowing, right? And yet being courageous enough at the same time to really just trust yourself and to have faith in the universe or God or however you want to call it, that you will land on your feet and that everything will be okay. Because you see, there are things that we know, and then there are things that we know that we don't know. But the biggest piece of the pie out of all the knowledge and information that exists in the universe is what we don't know that we don't know, right? So for some of your audience listening in today, they maybe do not know that they do not know what NLP is. And keeping in mind, we still haven't given the definition yet. So, and I can remember the very first time that I heard about NLP. So prior to that, I did not know that I did not know it even existed. And this is true for all of us, whatever stage we are in our life, whatever stage of leadership you're in, whether you're leading 5 people or 500, there is always going to be something that we don't know that if we did know would help us on our personal and professional development journey. And so from that first workshop that I did, where I just kind of trusted myself and I got out of the way of my over analytical self-talk, blah, blah, blah. And I just, began to take action and just trusted myself, because there was some kind of intuition there. There was definitely some kind of pull there that was beyond my rational comprehension or understanding. And I just trusted it, right? And I just went for it. And so when I started to feel stuck, right, when I was towards the end of that 10 years of working in hospitality, because here's the thing, my salary was there, I had housing allowance, I could eat in the restaurant for free 3 times a day, yet my happiness and fulfillment was declining. And I believe that that's a clue. When our happiness or our fulfillment is beginning to decline, that is a message from the subconscious mind that we need to grow, that we need to do something different, right? Because now we're just stuck in the hamster wheel. And of course, the happiness and the fulfillment is going to go down. So I'm a firm believer you have a choice, right? At that point, if your happiness and fulfillment is declining, you can choose to ignore it. La, 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 la. Well, guess what? If you ignore it, the universe in its infinite wisdom is going to find a way to push you outside of our comfort zone through some kind of drama or life event or losing a job or a relationship meltdown or whatever. So we have a choice. We can consciously choose to grow, thereby minimizing those surprises from the universe, or we can just be complacent and then, some kind of drama is going to happen, because I really believe that our purpose in this life is to continue to evolve and grow as one of our main reasons for coming onto this planet. Now, I'm talking at a spiritual level here. You know, we come down into this plane of existence to learn and to grow. And so, of course, now I choose to consciously grow and evolve by attending workshops, visiting new places, hanging out with cool people such as yourself, and trying new things.
Yeah, no, that sounds lovely. And I think, when you did talk about logic there, right, I felt like there was much more to logic there, Luke. And just that box of logic, right, that's quite limiting in nature. But I think being able to, have that flexibility and openness, right, where the nature or the universe takes you, because every beautiful thing that might have happened in our lives is always sort of, free flowing in nature, right? It just happens, right? And you've got to be able to keep your senses right to be able to attune yourself to what the universe is telling you. So yeah, no, quite interesting. So we've had quite a build up to NLP. So maybe let's let's sort of talk about that. So I've personally been quite intrigued with the concept of NLP, right? And around, what does it really sort of mean to the core and core? Because there's so much information out there, right? There's a lot of stage NLP too that happens, right? So just to be able to understand from an expert like you, what does it really mean in a very simplified, simple language, really?
Excellent, thank you. So let's give it a clear definition first. So NLP is Neurolinguistic Programming. And the way that I like to explain it is that, first of all, we have our neurology, right? So our brain is connected to every part of our body through a series of neurons. Yeah, and I think everyone is familiar with Biology 101. They've seen the nerve endings in the pictures and the diagrams in science class or something when we were, 12 years old or whatever. So our neurons connect our brain to every part of the body. And you can almost think of our neurons kind of like the hardware on a computer, for example. So the computer has the CPU, and then it has all these wires going to different things to do different functions. Yeah. Then, so that's neuro. L is linguistic. Now, linguistic is a fancy word for language, and you can think about it as code for the computer, right? So the hardware of the computer, it's nothing except, some CPUs, some microchips, and some wiring. It needs some kind of coding done to create a program. Right. So the coding is done, and there's different codes for different computers, Linux and C++ or something. And I'm not in IT, so I don't really know what they are. But one thing is for sure, the coding that is used creates a program. And the program basically tells the hardware how to operate and to do all its function that it's doing, like we're doing on this podcast right now. So if we think about that in the sense of us as humans, our hardware is our body and all of our neurology with how our brain is connected to all through our body. The words that we use consistently with repetition creates our program, which in our human form is the behaviors that we do, the actions that we take, the habits that we have formed is all part of our human operating system. And we use that language, right? Whatever language you speak, whether it's English or Japanese or whatever, we are programmed through the continuous and repetitive use of that language. Now, that's just a bit of a, I guess, an explanation of how we actually operate. So what NLP actually allows us to do is to reprogram our software, right? So we can use new code, we can use different language, we can use empowered language in a certain structure to be able to upgrade our human operating system, to upgrade our software so that the computer runs much more smoother, much more efficient. It has all the programs, things open when you want them to. It's like it's super, super quick. You know, when you get a new laptop and everything is like, it's kind of like that. So NLP allows us to reprogram especially the unconscious or subconscious programs that we have, which is up to 95%. So neuroscience tells us that 95% of the day we are operating on a set of unconscious habits, programs, beliefs, and perceptions. 95%.
Correct.
So that means we're only consciously aware 5% of the day. Right. And Carl Jung has a beautiful quote that goes something like, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life and we will call it fate. Right.
Wow.
As if things just happen to us. Well, here's my challenge to the listeners today. If you're not happy with the results that you're achieving in your life, you can do something about it. You can make the unconscious programs, that 95%, you can bring them to your conscious awareness and you can choose to change the code, to upgrade the software to 2.0 or to 3.0. And so NLP is basically a set of 30 to 40, maybe even more, specific code, if you like, language structure, linguistic patterns, frameworks, processes, and systems to take these soft skills and put it into a structure, just like kind of upgrading, putting an app into your phone or upgrading your computer to operate at a higher level. And so here at Coachology, we teach our students to understand these tools and techniques to be able to upgrade their human operating system.
Right, that sounds quite beautiful. I think it reminds me of the concept of the scripts and the mini scripts, right? That we generally write when we're growing up, right? I do remember when I was at school, right? I did study a lot in like my books, right, around the birds in Australia, right? And I had quite fascination with kookaburras, right?
Oh, they're beautiful.
And yeah, absolutely. And I realized very recently, Luke, I was just sitting in a reflective space, just sort of thinking about, where am I, where I am today, right? And it did remind me, took me back to that fascination for kookaburras, right? And realized that, here I am in Western Australia right now. So it was quite interesting that like my mind was so powerful as a child to have, really decided that, this is what your life is going to look like as an adult. So I think what you talk about is extremely powerful right now. So in terms of understanding NLP, Luke, like with the programming in our minds, right? So let's say if someone, grew up in a family where they believed in sort of not being quite enough, right, as a person, or, there's this one thing that I notice when I'm working with my clients too. There's this notion of not feeling good enough, right? That comes up for a lot of people today. how can sort of NLP, help them sort of understand this narrative to begin with, right? So being able to identify it, like how you said, the first thing is to be able to identify the place that you're operating from, to be able to start bringing about that change. So how does that process really look like in an NLP, let's say, session, if you'd like to call it?
Yeah, sure. One of the most successful forms of coaching is NLP coaching. An NLP coach practitioner, they will have learned all of the NLP tools and techniques, a lot of which are simply communication tools. Keeping in mind that communication happens two times. First, communication is happening internally, which is simply your thinking process, right? So that your internal communication is your thinking. Then we have our external communication on how we communicate to the world around us. And you mentioned one of the key words just a moment ago was what we call limiting beliefs. So our belief systems is what we believe to be true about the world around us. And beliefs, though, are not necessarily always true. Beliefs are not fact. Right. So again, neuroscience tells us that we have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. 95% of those thoughts are the same as the day before and the day before that and the day before that. And on average, 70% of people's thoughts are actually negative. So a belief system is created through a repetition of thought. Now, interestingly, the subconscious mind, it does not know good or bad, right or wrong, or even past and future. The subconscious mind only knows the present moment, and it only knows how you train it through focus and repetition. So, for example,
No, I really like, sorry to sort of come in here. I really like what you've just said, something around unconscious, right? So it's quite interesting that you mentioned that the unconscious does not know, the present or the future, right? It is what it is, right? And sometimes, even with the collective unconscious, you could be experiencing thoughts that your ancestors might have experienced at some point in time, but the unconscious does not know, the present and the past right there. Wow, that took a moment for me to actually sort of, go back and really take in. So yeah, thanks for that, Luke.
Welcome. Now, especially as a child, right? So as a child, the subconscious mind is wide open. It's like a sponge. And so a child, how does a child learn anything? They learn it through a process called modeling. They simply replicate and copy and mimic the behavior, the language, the actions of the people around them, caregivers, parents, siblings, grandparents, and so on. Now, you can imagine as a kid, they don't really know right or wrong, good or bad, past or future. We need to train them how to behave. Good boy, right? No, don't do that. Don't throw that glass on the table, right? And so as a child, it's just wide open. It's just like a sponge. And that's how our belief systems are actually developed most of the time as children up until the age of 7 years old. Now, let's use a simple example. If I grew up in a family or an environment where, the parents were somewhat verbally abusive, shall we say. And they said things like, why are you so stupid? You get nothing right. Why do you always mess it up? You're so dumb. You're so stupid. And after enough repetition of this child, because the child doesn't know any different, if mum or dad say that thing, whatever they say, it must be true.
Yeah.
Right. And so what happens with a repetition and repetition and repetition, and of course there's emotion in that. So the repetition and then the emotion and that focus. So the child grows up believing that I'm not intelligent or I'm not smart enough, or through other actions and behaviors and words, I am not worthy. I am not good enough. I don't deserve success. And we all have them. We all have these unconscious limiting beliefs. And you can think of limiting beliefs, if we come back to our computer analogy, a limiting belief is like a virus on the computer. Remember the old days before we had good antivirus, and your computer would get a virus, and then it just like everything slows down, it hangs, it freezes up. Well, a limiting belief is like that. And very simply, as Henry Ford famously says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Right? So if we continually have those thoughts, 60,000 thoughts per day, 95% of them the same as the day before, 70% of those negative, it's the repetition of the thought that creates that limiting belief. It's like the default operating system that's running in the background of the computer, and most people are not aware of it. But it limits us. It holds us back. It prevents us from taking action because we believe it to be true, right? So in terms of NLP coaching, let me give you 3 steps on how our audience can identify or begin to identify what is unconscious. Number 1, they really need to start paying attention to those thoughts. They need to make those unconscious thoughts to be conscious. So when they notice that they're having a lot of negative thoughts, well, that's going to lead to limiting beliefs with enough repetition. So pay attention to your thoughts. And the easiest way to do that is to do some journaling, some unfiltered journaling. Just blah, 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 and just throw it down, maybe 2 times a day when you wake up in the morning or at the end of the day. Perfect. Number 2, again, using your awareness here, is to be more aware of the conscious language that you're using, but not just conscious, actually, because remember, limiting beliefs are unconscious. So people say things like, oh, I could never lose weight, or, oh, gee whiz, I'm always late, or, oh, all the good guys or all the good girls, they're all taken. Guess what? Those kind of flippant, off-the-cuff remarks, that's using language, and that language gives you a clue to a limiting belief that's running in the background.
Correct.
Right? And the third way that we can begin to become aware of these limiting beliefs is look in the area of your life that is not working. So, for example, if you're having challenges with relationships, you get in a relationship, 6 months later, it breaks down. You get back into another relationship, 5 months later, it breaks down. If there's a pattern here of relationships not working, then I would bet money that there's a limiting belief around relationships, right? Same with money, same with career, business, and success. Whatever area is not working, or with a bit of conscious awareness, you might begin to notice that you kind of self-sabotage in certain areas. Guess what? That's a limiting belief controlling your thoughts, your actions, and your behaviors.
Right. And I think, just around limiting beliefs right there, look, I think there's a lot of like how you said, we are operating 95% from our unconscious mind, right? And I think just being flexible as a human being, number 1, to acknowledge that, right? Because I think one of the issues that I see today in human beings that creates a lot of suffering is the notion of I know. Right.
Yeah,
and I think
know
just
everything.
that's right. And just the purpose of this podcast too is really like, just to be able to sort of give myself a mindful space of learning. Because when I'm working with my clients, a lot of times, the energy that I receive is that, I know a little more than they do, right?
Yep.
Which is quite an energy, right? Which I do appreciate. But I think, being in a space with people like yourself and other creative people, right? It really humbles you in a manner that you realize that, you only can know a little, right? And being able to accept where you're at, right? As a coach, as a therapist, as a psychotherapist, as an NLP practitioner, whatever modality you use, right? Just being able to acknowledge the humanness within is really, really important. And I really like how, like how you say, including yourself, right? So you're not saying, people have limiting beliefs. You talk about we, like even with the speech, right? You say we all have limiting beliefs, which makes it more approachable for even our viewers, right, to understand that you and I are not an exception to that, right? So we're still working on our journeys. We realize, a new thing every day, and just being able to acknowledge that, sort of, give spark to that human being
Mhm.
inside of us right now. So yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for
well,
saying that.
there's so much stuff that I don't know that I don't know, that if I did know would help me in my life and help my clients to another degree. And
Mhm.
it's really something we really drill into all of our students, because in addition to NLP, we also certify ICF coaches as well. So
Mhm.
ICF is the International Coaching Federation, the world's largest coaching authority. And together with the tools of NLP and the tools of ICF coaching, we really produce some amazing world-class coaches. And during the training, we make a very, very strong point that to be a great coach and to be a great therapist, you must be humble,
Mhm.
right? You are, I am not better than my client, right? There are certain things that they know much, much more about in life than I do. And so we can never have this kind of better than attitude, because it simply doesn't work. And
Yeah.
we have a bit of a joke. My wife, Coach Christy, who's an
Mhm.
MCC certified coach, master certified coach with 15,000 hours of one-on-one coaching experience.
Wow.
She calls those coaches that get a little bit, arrogant, a little bit better than. She calls them King Kong. And so we remind all of our students, don't be King Kong, right? Like, because
Mm,
it's not going to help you to help other people, because if you think you know everything, then your glass is full and you've got no opportunity to grow to the next level. And she says, if I see anyone being King Kong, I'm going to come to your house and take your certificate back. So we really make it quite important, and that has to start with us.
yeah.
I'm also an MCC certified coach with Marshall Goldsmith, all of Tony Robbins events, you name it. And I still know that there's so much more that I don't know. And,
Yeah.
in fact, I open almost every leadership workshop that I run all around the region here in Asia. I start with this concept of the comfort zone, what we spoke about before, what we know we don't know, and what we don't know that we don't know.
Hmm.
And I really, drill that in, because most of the time I'm working with senior executives and business owners and entrepreneurs, and they've got to get it that they don't know everything.
Hmm.
And if they can get to that place first, now they can actually have an opportunity to learn something. But if they're not willing to acknowledge or to be conscious that there's stuff that they don't know, then what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting how the conversation has unfolded, right? I haven't even come to the questions that I had to ask, but I love it. I love the spontaneity of it, Luke. And I thought I had an idea around how this might gonna go. So I think in terms of understanding leadership, right? I think in my own, personal experience and a lot of people around me, with the working culture, right? We do see a lot of people in the leadership position who who come from a space of knowing, right? And it's almost like a black spot onto
Yep,
them if they
yep.
do agree and accept that they were at the wrong, or they made a mistake or something. And something that our viewers might relate to, because a lot of the viewers would be from Australia, Middle East, or Pakistan, let's say, right? um, just the culture in terms of, that the boss knows it better, right? And there's always this space for the employee to be able to reflect and, understand what's going on for them, and
Mhm.
really less responsibility for, the quote unquote boss, right? And the culture to be able to go back and reflect on what was really going on for me, right? what are some of your views around that? Because the leadership that you talk about right now is very collaborative in
Yes.
nature, right? It's a leadership that you don't want to be scared of, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
leadership that you would want to appreciate, and actually be vulnerable in front of your leader, right? So I've been very lucky to have leaders that I've worked with who I've been brutally honest with, right? Extremely honest. But with a few of them, being in a conversation with them for 10 minutes, I walk out with a headache, quite literally, because I'm quite attuned to what's really happening in my mind and in my body, right? So what are some of your views around that? Because that's the brutal reality of the leadership world today, right? And I'm not talking about 5% of people. I'm
Yeah.
almost talking about 60 to 70% of people in leadership positions who do not understand the responsibility of being a true leader. What would you say to that, Luke?
Yeah, it's complicated in a sense, because when you have a leader who is not leading in a way that you appreciate or like, there's still an opportunity to learn, and there's still an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for you to grow. And you know, I so how to tell this story? Okay, so when I was working in hotel world down on Koh Samui, I
Mm-hmm.
had been working at the first hotel for about 5 years, and then I moved to the second hotel, and my role was what they call resident manager. It's basically number two in the resort.
Right.
And when I joined, and it was a brand new 5-star hotel. They had pool villas. They had a view to the beach. The top villa sold for $1,000 per night, right? And it was brand new hotel. Now, at that time, because it was brand new, it didn't have a soul at that point in time, and they were running
Mm-hmm.
on like 20% occupancy. There was no one there. So when I joined in the role as resident manager, they did not have a GM. So I was basically acting GM. And so that gave me a lot of one-on-one time with the resort owners as well. Yeah. And so that was cool, because, we were still putting in the systems and the processes, and it was a very creative, there's a lot of synergy there and so on. Anyway, after about 3 or 4 months, they hired a GM. So Luke's ego took a massive hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've hired this guy above me who I now need to report to. All of the one-on-one time that I used to have with the resort owners, that's all gone. And to make things worse, the guy that they hired, let me put this politely, he was a douchebag, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was not a good leader. He was not a
Mm-hmm.
good communicator. The rest of the staff hated him. But I had to receive some very, very good advice from my previous boss at the first hotel that I worked at. And the advice is quite simple: tend your own garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tend means take care of.
Yeah.
Take care of your own garden. And that was due to some incidences and things that happened at the first resort when I was responsible for this, and people were complaining. And he said to me, Luke, tend your own garden. And
Mm-hmm.
so when this new GM came in, our roles were a little bit defined. My job was to take care of what they call rooms divisions, which is front office, housekeeping, engineering, and gardener. And then he, in addition to being the GM, he would take care of food and beverage, right? Basically the kitchen and the restaurant. So we did have kind of clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And oh my gosh, I could have thrown this guy under the bus so many times, because he was just hopeless. He messed
Mm-hmm.
up. He was poor in communicating. The team didn't like him, but I just said, no, I'm going to tend my own garden. I'm going to make my rooms division team the best on all of Koh Samui, and I'm just going to let Buddha take care of the details. Let Buddha to balance the books. So I just did it. Whenever he asked me to do something, I said, yep, will do, even if I didn't agree with it, even if I thought it was stupid. Now, sometimes I would give him feedback. We had quite an open dialogue. And so I was able to push back sometimes, and we could find a win-win. And at that time, I also had a separate mentor, right? And this is part of the solution I think you're looking for in the question there. How can we survive when we have a douchebag leader? Is you've got to get yourself some kind of outside counsel. You've got to find yourself a mentor or a coach who can, if for no other reason, it's someone for you to vent to, right? And so this gentleman, he was actually a consultant for the hotel, but he wasn't there on a day-to-day basis. He'd come down, a couple of days per month, and we would stay in contact. So I really saw him as like my personal mentor. I don't know if he knew that, but it was. Anyway, here in Thailand, there's typically a 4-month probationary period where at the end of that 4 months, you sit down and have a meeting, and you either, you stay on in that role or you get asked to leave. And they told this gentleman, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to keep you. And then they said, Luke, we're going to offer you the GM role. Here's a nice increase in salary. Thank you for being solid through this time. You've been doing a great job. So the moral to that story, tend your own garden, right? Because you can't always control your boss, right? Now, it is an opportunity to learn and grow. You can do it two ways. You can hate them and you can feel angry about it and you can be pissed off and you can be all of that, but that doesn't help you. It doesn't help your team, and it actually keeps you stuck in the past, right? Or you can choose to be proactive about it, which is what I did. I just focused on what was within my control, and I just did it the best I could. And even the mentor that I had, the consultant, he said, Luke, he said, I don't know how you kept your cool during that period, because he knew what he was like, right? The mentor consultant guy, he knew that he was a douchebag. He said, your level of professionalism and your patience is really, really admirable. And he said, that's why you got the GM role, because of the way that you handled that difficult situation, right? So that would be my advice. Yeah. And, I could have gone to the owners and I could have said, oh, the GM did this and and I thought, you know what? No, Buddha will balance the books. I'm just going to focus on what is within my control and just do the absolute best I can. And then that's what I did. And I got the rewards at the end. Now, failing all of that, if your boss is toxic, you still have a choice. You can leave. Right. And that's what happened at the third hotel that I worked at, the third and final hotel, which is where I started the story about the hospitality before. I got to a point with 2 years, as I mentioned, everything was running smoothly, chug. And I eventually had a disagreement with the owners. They had promised me if I had achieved a certain KPI, which was something like revenue in the hotel, if I achieved those numbers, I would get a bonus. And at that time, it was a significant bonus for me at that time. Well, 12 months into my role there, I hit the targets. I got the KPI, and they did not pay me what they had promised me. So they broke their promises. They did not keep their word, and I didn't actually really like them. I put it this way. I could not respect them anymore. And so I made a choice. I decided to leave. Yeah. And it was all that through that time where I was thinking, what am I most passionate about? When have I been most alive? Oh, it was the end of that training. I'm going to be a coach and a trainer. And then we had a negotiation. I said to them, listen, I know I should be giving you 2 months notice because of my role of GM, but here's the thing. You didn't pay my bonus. You did this and this and that. And I said, listen, it's not working out. I'm giving you 3 weeks notice. We negotiated like a settlement, the salary, some of the bonus. And I said, we're going to just go our separate ways and we're going to live life happily ever after, doing our own thing. I said, I will train and I'll coach the people that are going to replace me, whether that's the existing team for now. I'm going to delegate and hand over everything. I want you to be happy. I want you to success. I just can't be part of it anymore. So that would be an alternative choice that you do have. I know a lot of people say, oh, but no, I could never leave the job. Yeah, you can, right? If it is toxic, if it is affecting your mental health and your well-being, you absolutely have a choice to do what's best for you. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying you have a choice, and there is always a choice.
That's correct. Now, I really like the idea of sort of, sticking in control what you have and just leaving, the rest to just unfold. And I think one of the mistakes that we do make, in our day to day in the corporate life really is to give them, that person, the toxic person of authority, a lot of power, right? And I think, just being able to understand, they're human beings too, right? And putting them on the pedestal is not going to help us, it's not going to help them, and it's not going to help the relationship anyway. So thank you for actually sort of talking about this, because I feel a lot of people, especially back home, would be able to relate to this a lot, right? And I think, something that they can start thinking about that might sort of course, it's not going to solve their problem, but it might just help them manage it on their day to day. So, in terms of just with the time too, I think maybe let's bounce into the last question, right? Really, and then I'd like you to talk a bit about your program and how can people register for your program. So generally, I do say to my clients to like whenever we're in conversation, right? It's not two people speaking; it's always four people speaking, right? So it's me and you, the adult us, right? But the little ones are also sort of sitting right here while we speak in this conversation, right? So I'd really like to know a bit more about the little Luke, right? And how did what the little Luke believed in, right, helped him be who he is today? Right. So I do see a lot of confidence, right? Even in the manner of speech, right? Even in the manner of being. And I think when you do sort of try and communicate a point, there's almost I did experience that in this conversation, right? There's almost this magic, right, where you're trying to establish something, and you're able to. So a lot of people try to establish things, right? But there's a difference, in being able to or not being able to. But I think when you do communicate, there's this power of communication that you have. So talk a bit more about, what was that little Luke like, back then, and
Okay.
how has that Luke helped this Luke be the person who he is today?
Thank you for your kind words, Sohail. So I was awkwardly, painfully shy as a child. And I don't know if you can remember, I'm about 2 meters tall. Now,
Well,
and
I absolutely remember it because I had to go like this to be able to actually sort of be in conversation with you. So I can never forget that.
Very good. Now, and I've been tall since I can remember. And, I think I was born at maybe a meter tall. My mother was in labor for 3 weeks. That's a joke. No, I've always been tall. I've always been the tallest in the class. And back then, though, I was really skinny. I was literally just legs, and then a head, right? And really, really long legs. And I used to get teased about it, and sometimes just like playfully, like, "Wow, look, he's all legs," and because I was really, really skinny as well. And as a teenager, we begin to be more consciously aware. We begin to develop our identity. We choose the friends that we're going to hang out with, and all those kinds of things. And this comes back to the limiting beliefs that we have as children, right? Because most of our limiting beliefs are programmed in those first 7 years of life. So even then, I was the tallest kid in my class or in my age all the time. Now, in Australia, I don't know if you're familiar with this, they have this thing called the tall poppy syndrome, which basically means if you kind of stand out in a crowd, people kind of want to chop you down to size.
Yeah.
Right. And that's with people who are very successful in their endeavors or this or that or whatever. People just kind of, knock them and put them down and, sometimes even bully them. And so that was the same with me, with my physical height. Right. And so literally, oh, look at you, you tall piece of pelican shit, just really silly kind of kid-like stuff. But with repetition, it became a limiting belief. So the limiting belief was, I'm too tall. I'm too tall. I'm too tall. Now, that actually translates to something slightly different, which is when I'm saying I'm too tall, I'm too tall, I'm too tall, what's really going on is I'm unconsciously saying to myself, it's safe to be average. If I'm average, I'm not standing out and no one needs to cut me down to size. So it's safe to be average. It's safe to be average. Now, remember, these belief systems are unconscious. They're on a loop. They're playing in the background 24/7. And because it's safe to be average, my posture was really poor, kind of hunched over shoulders. And, we now know, thanks to neuroscience and body work, that our posture directly links to our confidence level. People who are generally shy or non-confident, they're kind of hunched over. And then, of course, all of their behavior is linked to that. So I was painfully shy. I would be the guy standing in the corner hoping no one would come to talk to me, kind of shy. And now here's the thing. It's safe to be average. So my EQ, average. My early careers that I had, average. My money in the bank account, average. My personal relationships, average. Average. Every single area of my life was filtered through this limiting belief of it's safe to be average. Now, I did not become aware of this until I attended the NLP practitioner course when they started to teach us about this concept called limiting beliefs. And so the trainer is talking about it, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought, holy shit, excuse my language, that limiting belief, that core limiting belief has been like a lens or a filter on every single area of my life. Now, limiting beliefs are not true. Limiting beliefs are simply created by a repetition of thought and whatever we're focusing on at that time. So how do we create a new empowering belief? Well, we just make it up. And then with repetition and focus, you then install the new the new empowering belief. So I started by saying, I love to be tall. It's awesome to be tall. I can see everything that's going on around over here. I can see what's happening over there. I can see what's happening there. The air is fresh up here. That's when people used to tease me. What's the weather like up there? Right? And in fact, the weather is really good. Air is much fresh up here. I love to be tall. And you know what? Here's the kicker. To be tall, I love to be tall is to be outstanding, to literally stand out from the crowd. So as I installed that new empowering belief that I love to be tall and I am outstanding, the magic began to happen. Because now it's not safe to be average every single area of my life. Now I am outstanding. My relationships improved. I married the woman of my dreams. I created Coachology. Very financially secure with investments and houses and all of this kind of thing, money in the bank. My EQ is much better. I'm doing the work, my life's work that I'm passionate about. I'm contributing. I'm helping others to grow and to be fulfilled. So my life is outstanding because I used NLP to reprogram my human operating system.
Wow, that is quite a powerful story, Luke. Really, I think just listening to it, it was quite empowering just to be able to see how, just that one, concept of
That
limiting
one
beliefs,
limiting belief.
right?
And it's the same
Yeah.
like you mentioned before. According to Tony Robbins, one of the world's #1 speakers, which, by the way, Tony Robbins learned NLP first. He was an NLP practitioner as a student. Then he became an NLP trainer like me. And then he simply put his own flavor on it now. And he calls it the Tony Robbins experience. According to Tony Robbins, the world's #1 limiting belief is I'm not worthy. Right? I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Now, think about it. It means that I'm not worthy of success. I'm not worthy of abundance. I'm not worthy of love. And this is how we begin to self-sabotage ourselves. We're so close to achieving what we want to achieve, and then drama, right? Because those limiting beliefs, as the word suggests, they limit us. They hold us back. But if you can flip that, I am worthy. I am good enough. I am worthy of love. I'm worthy of success. I'm worthy of abundance. I'm worthy of great health. I do deserve this. I'm a child of the universe, and I came here to learn, to grow, and to love. And I am worthy. And that changes everything. So now, instead of looking at the world like this, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. Now it's like, I am worthy. I deserve this. Opportunities just magically begin to manifest. Now, the thing is, the opportunities were always there. We could not see them because we didn't have the right lens. We did not have the right software installed to be able to see those opportunities that are abundant all around us.
Correct. It was interesting when you said that, not looking at it from like a full view vision, but a periphery, right? The song started playing in my background. I'm sexy and I know it. Like just being able to acknowledge, your build, right? And I think, even in terms of your, height that you talk about, your physiology actually governs your entire life now. So, you're tall enough in your relationship, you're tall enough in your finances, you're tall enough in the purpose, right? I think, something that's really important here and that stood out to me was, and now I sort of understand why is there so much power in what you say is because you've applied it on your own, right? You believed in that facilitator, you took it on board, that completely flipped your life around, right? And that's exactly what you're passing on to so many people now through your program. So, and I think this is a good, organic flow too. So maybe, tell us a bit about how can people register for the programs that you offer, Luke, and what would that look like for them if they're really interested?
Thank you for the opportunity to share that, Sohail. I think just before we get to that, I want to fully answer your question about
Sure.
this little Luke. Okay.
Yep.
So, I did the work to change my belief systems, and there was still a little Luke that was not fully accepted, right? That did not feel love. And I came about this awareness through my meditation practice. So for about 4 years now, I've been meditating daily, and I follow the meditation practices of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Right.
And so I've been to 2 or 3 of Dr. Joe's workshops, and I also became a certified trainer of Dr. Joe's work. So he has his main workshops, which he delivers all around the world. They're called an advanced week-long retreat. And but then kind of separate to that, or in parallel to that, he has his kind of business division, which he calls Neuro Change Solutions. And that was a 2-day workshop that he created, taking the principles from his week-long retreat, but kind of condensing them and delivering them to an audience that is primarily leaders, executives, and business owners. And that is offered as an in-house program for a company who's looking to develop, mindfulness and mental health and overall well-being. or it can be delivered as a public program where people come in from wherever. And so I'm the only certified trainer to do that in this part of the world, together with my wife, Coach Christy. And so we do both. We've done in-house programs and we've run public programs that we do 2 times per year. And it was through the meditation practice. So one of the definitions of meditation is actually to become aware, right? To become aware of our thoughts and to become aware of our programs, yeah? And by programs, I mean those repetitive thoughts, those belief systems, and so on. And I had in one of his meditations, he talks about there's the you that started this meditation 1 hour ago. Now there's this future you existing in the now, and who is different from that person who started the meditation 1 hour ago. And then I thought, whoa, that's pretty cool. And then he said, and I want you to imagine there's another future you loving you now. And then in that moment, I imagined this line of Lukes starting from when I was born as a little baby and then getting bigger and bigger to the present Luke. And then there's the old grandpa Luke or whatever, gray beards. And there's just like this lineup of Lukes going along. And it was in that kind of meditative state where I could see teenage Luke, who didn't feel loved and accepted. And so then with the next few meditations, in the next couple of weeks, I just set an intention right at the beginning of the meditation to fully accept and to love that teenage Luke, because I did reject him, right? I did not accept him. He was painfully shy and awkward and clumsy, didn't have a girlfriend till he was 23 and all of this kind of stuff. And it was almost like he was punished. And so I repaired, knowing what I know now, right, with the experiences and the NLP and the coaching and everything, I was now able to hold the space to forgive myself, to be able to repair that relationship with him.
Yeah, extremely powerful. And I think you say it's quite in a flow, but it's a really, really, really difficult thing to do, right? Being able to really acknowledge the little one, right? And I think in the first episode too, I did acknowledge the little one sitting with me right now. I generally like doing it because he likes it when I acknowledge him, right? So it just gives that sense of energy, and I'm glad that just in this conversation, I feel like you've been so open and so vulnerable, right, about your failures, right? So you talked a bit about your successes, right, which was quite interesting, but I think you've talked more about things that were really difficult for you in life, right? And it takes a lot of courage to be able to talk about things that did not go so right for you, and thank you for trusting me and our viewers, to be able to hold the space while you spoke about it, Luke. So yeah, just sort of coming to the almost the end of it. So how can people sort of sign up for some of the workshops that you offer? We'll definitely put in the description of Coachology in the comments box and everything. Any sort of upcoming workshops that you have that you're hosting at this point in time, like any open
thank
programs,
you,
any public
Sohail.
programs?
Yeah, we have our 5-day NLP program. We run that 3 times per year here in Bangkok. And it is the final one for this year is actually starting next week on the 9th of November. So probably a little bit too short a notice for most people to get here for that one. But we run it 3 times per year in March, July, and November. And it's usually in the middle of the month there. And it's 5 days in a row. And the NLP it's so powerful. We only do it as a face-to-face program. Through, lockdowns and COVID, of course, we did run it as hybrid because people still wanted to learn the tools, especially during lockdown where mental health and stresses were quite a challenge. And so, of course, we still wanted to get the message and the tools out there. And now that everyone can fly wherever they want to at the moment, we've decided to keep that as a face-to-face training. The second popular program that we have is the ICF Leadership Coaching Program. So certainly here in Asia, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, leadership coaching, in other words, coaching tools that leaders can use to coach and develop their teams, is super, super popular at the moment. And it's not popular because it's a fad. It's popular because it works, right? It actually gets results. So we run it as a public program. We do it as an in-house program. We do shorter programs for companies as well over, 2 days or something like that. And the ICF program, it's a 4-day program with a little bit of group coaching afterwards. But we still do offer that as an online program. So people can do about 20 hours of pre-study. And then basically they join the final 2 days, which is basically day 3 and day 4. They join that live virtually from wherever they are in the world. And, we've got the ICF is directly after our NLP. So we have 5 days of NLP training. We have 2 days off, and then we're straight into the ICF program for 4 days. And I think we've got about 26 people registered for the program, which starts the week after next. About half of them are joining us live here in Bangkok, and then the other half are doing their pre-study at the moment, and then they'll join the day 3 and day 4. And then when we do the online coaching, when we do the online group coaching, which is the practice and the implementation of the tools, everyone is online for that. So we've got people from all over. And then I guess the other main program that I'm still very passionate about is that Dr. Joe program that I mentioned. We run that twice per year in February. So February is a good time. Anyone interested in learning practical mindfulness programs and concepts and tools and techniques, especially designed for busy leaders and executives, then that's definitely worth a look. So you can find us at coachology.com. You can see my name there, Luke Salway. If anyone does a LinkedIn search and find me, I'll be delighted to connect with you via LinkedIn. They're probably the easiest ways. From our website, you can see my email address there, luke@coachology.com. So, I'd be delighted to welcome anyone. We offer free discovery calls, a 30-minute call where we can find out, what it is, you're looking to solve or what challenges you're wanting to overcome. And of course, we offer in-house workshops as well. So organizations and companies generally who are wanting leadership style programs, whether it's leadership coaching or communication or conflict resolution, strategic planning, you name it. And I'm available to travel all around the world.
Wow, that is amazing. And yep, I can definitely say Luke is very approachable. So even me, after approaching Luke after 8 years or so, I got an answer right away, Luke. So I can't be sort of, thankful enough for this beautiful conversation. And I think just like how I said, the purpose of the podcast really being able to, have those mindful conversations. And I really hope, the content was amazing. Like I really loved what you had to say today. But I think, it gives the viewers the opportunity to actually just, sit back, right, and just, have the feel for the conversation, right? Because for me, it was more of an experience, right, than just the conversation. So I do want to check in with you too, Luke, before we come to the end of it. How was this conversation for you? Because you spoke about quite a lot of things, right? And you were brave enough to bring the little Luke today too in the podcast. So what was that like for you? And what was this conversation like for you, Luke?
Well, thank you, Sohail. Thank you for creating this safe space to be able to openly share and discuss. I really enjoyed the organic flow of the conversation. And you know, I love to be able to help people offer value in some way. And so I found that, you know, through stories, a lot of, you know, most people can relate to these kinds of stories. And if the viewers got any benefit today, then I'm really, really grateful for that. And I'm really, really grateful for you to create this space to allow these conversations to flow. So yeah, it was really, really good fun, an unexpected delight.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Luke. Thank you. Much appreciated. And we'll speak soon again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sohail. Really great to connect with you again. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you.